Hello and welcome to our webinar, Searching Databases on AmericanAncestors.org. My name is Ginevra Morse. I'm the Director of Education and Online Programs at American Ancestors and New England Historic Genealogical Society. I will be moderating today's event. We are a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history and are pleased to offer such programming for our members and friends around the world. And I also want to note that we are, of course, broadcasting from home with various limitations and distractions. We do apologize if there are any interruptions from our end, and we thank you for your patience and for bearing with us. If we do lose the connection, you will still have access to a full recording on our website. So our presenter today is Database Coordinator Molly Rogers. Molly works on our database collections, maintaining the accuracy of current databases, and managing teams of volunteers to transcribe and add new collections. Originally from York, Pennsylvania, Molly studied English and French at Colby College in Maine and has a master's degree in library and information science from Simmons College. So AmericanAncestors.org holds more than 1.4 billion searchable records with new databases and names being added each week. Today, Molly will illustrate the scope of these databases, how to leverage search terms to find your ancestors, and generally how to be successful in your search. We'll also look at a few other areas of our website, moving beyond databases. At any point during the presentation, feel free to type your question into the panel to the right of your screen. We'll address those after the presentation. There is no handout for this session, but we are recording this event, and starting tomorrow, you can easily go back and review any of the content on our website. So if you miss anything on today's first listen, don't worry. You can always go back, pause, rewind, fast forward, and watch the recording according to your own time and your own schedule. All right, so without further ado, I will turn things over to Molly.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Molly Rogers, and I work on the database team here at NEHGS. So I work on adding new data to our existing databases and creating new databases for our users to search. Today, we'll dive into how to search for your ancestors on AmericanAncestors.org. We'll begin with an overview of what we have. We offer over 470 databases with over 1.4 billion names available to search. Many of these records are vital records like births, marriages, and deaths, although census records and genealogical sketches are all other common forms of data. Our records span a variety of locations. So while our specialty is New England, of course, you should always look and see if we have databases that might relate to your research from other places across the world and, of course, across the United States. You can see a lot of our records come from larger states in the New England area, but we have records from every state. We have 216 unique databases. So these are databases that you can't find in other places besides AmericanAncestors.org. Highlights include our collection of genealogical journals containing scholarly articles on various topics relating to family history. Popular journals include our own New England Historical and Genealogical Register and the Mayflower Descendant. Many of our unique databases come to us through partnerships with other organizations. We've partnered with the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court Archives to offer probate file papers for counties across Massachusetts. This is a work in progress, but we currently have data on Berkshire, Bristol, Essex, Franklin, Hampshire, Middlesex, Norfolk, Plymouth, and Suffolk counties. We're also partnering with the Archdiocese of Boston to digitize their sacramental records, which mostly include baptisms, marriages, and confirmations from 1789 to 1920. We offer 2 databases as part of this project. One is free for guest members to browse, while the other is fully searchable and available to paying NEHGS members. This project is also a work in progress. Finally, we've been working with a few different lineage societies to make their membership applications available on our site. Our partners include the Society of Colonial Wars in Massachusetts and the General Society of Mayflower Descendants. So we're working with them to make their applications available. And as part of our 175th anniversary celebrations, we've digitized applications to join our own society up to 1900. So that 175th anniversary is happening this year. Our most popular databases often fluctuate a little bit, but Mayflower Family's 5th generation, 1700 to 1880, is almost always at the top. The Catholic records are always popular, and generally people are really excited about some of our resources for doing New England research. So let's get started. As we've recommended, we always want to start on our homepage, AmericanAncestors.org. To begin, you want to log in, so you can see the green button in the upper right corner. Once you've logged in, you'll be able to see your name in the header. So here you can see it says, "Welcome, Molly." So now you know that you do have access to all of the records in our databases that apply to you. If you're a guest member, you'll be able to see things from our guest databases. If you're a paying member, you'll be able to see everything. So that just gives you the access that you are that you should have. So we're going to start by discussing our database browse page. This is a great place to start exploring our various databases to see if their locations, date range, or subject matter matches with your research interests. So to begin, we'll click Browse Databases A to Z in our search drop-down menu. You can see here we're on the home page and you're going to go to Browse Databases A to Z. So then you will see our list of 471 databases. This list has a variety of filters. Many of them are located in this box here on the left. It can also be searched by keyword here. Sorry, I'm gonna get my arrow button. Now you should be able to see what I'm pointing to. So you can often search by a keyword, like maybe you're looking for all the databases we have that might pertain to Massachusetts, or all the databases we have that pertain to the Mayflower. So on the next slide, I've given an example where I searched for the word Catholic. And so here you can see our list of about 5 databases that might be helpful in your research. So now we'll go back to the page, and I think I've sorted it differently this time. If you scroll down, you can just see we have a few more ways to sort this list. So say you were looking for, only databases from 1800 to 1850, or maybe you're only looking for vital records like a birth, marriage, or death. So if you scroll down, you have a few more options for sorting. And then it must be on our next slide that I have another example. So here, I think I've sorted it by category. So we're looking at all of our databases that fall into the census, tax, and voter list category. And I wanted to explain our icons to you and show you how to actually start searching a database. So say you were interested in this Boston census right here from 1810. We would recommend either clicking on the magnifying glass or on the database title itself. And so that will take you to the database-specific search page that we're going to discuss in detail. You see the little camera icon next to the magnifying glass. That means that this database has images. So in contrast, you can see here, this one has a little sheet of paper icon, and that means that it is an index-only database. So all of our new databases, we are trying to have images associated with them. We want to connect you with that original material. But a few of our older databases may only have information that comes from another source. And then the star is a way to make something your favorite database. You can see here that you can filter this list by only my favorite databases. So if you click on the star, it will turn solid, and so that means it's one of your favorite databases. And you can use that to sort of create your own category. Say you have, like, I don't know, 3 databases that you search all the time and you only want to search within those databases, you can use the stars here to create that category. Or say you're interested in Mayflower things and you want to combine maybe a database from our vital records collection with one from our genealogies collection and search both of them. So you can sort of play around with what is your favorite database. If you are tired of having a database in your favorites list, just click on the star again and it'll look like all these stars here that have the center that's open. So we're going to dive into some examples. From here, we're going to say we clicked on one of those database titles. That's where we'll dive in. So here you can see I clicked on the New England Historical and Genealogical Register. So as I mentioned, this is our scholarly journal that we've been publishing since the 1800s. And this search page has been generated specifically for this database. So you're going to find only the search fields that are possible to search, and there's search tips that help you figure out how should you search this database. And so this database actually belongs to our journal collection, and our journals are indexed slightly differently from our other collections. And so these search tips are going to help you understand that. So the way they're indexed is it's basically like looking at the index in the back of the book. You're going to have names and the page that they're associated with, but we don't have more complex data like a record date or a record type or a location. So you can see here in the search tips that it says year is the year of publication of the issue of the journal. And it also says that you can, if you know an article title, you can use the keywords field to search for it. So we'll experiment with that a little bit later. So here I'm searching for John Palmer, and he actually happens to be an ancestor of my boyfriend. I thought I'd use this real life family as an example in this webinar to sort of give you an idea for things that I'm thinking about as I'm searching. My own family was not in Massachusetts in the 1600s, so I'm using his as an example. And so here, if you scroll down, I just wanted to show you more of what the bottom of this page looks like. You can sort of orient yourself. Here are the search tips. We have sample images. So if you're just learning about this database and aren't sure what you might find inside, a sample image should give you an idea. And then the description, you can find all sorts of really helpful information in the database description. And so what we're trying to do is, our website is a place where you can find historical documents. And we want to make sure that you have the most context possible for understanding where did these documents come from before they became part of our website. So the database description is a place where hopefully you can figure that out. So here you can see that we're just telling you that this information is going to come from our genealogical journal that we publish every quarter that has been going since 1847. So this is a really important thing that we're going to talk about. We have 2 main ways to search our site. One of them is called a best fit search, and that is database search and then category search, what we're going to talk about. And so if you think about my John Palmer example, right now, a best fit search is going to look for all Johns and all Palmers that are in the register. And so that's going to be a fairly large pool, but it's a really flexible search. So say you're taking my name, for example. My full name is Mary Rogers. If I was searching for an ancestor named Mary Rogers in the, 1800s, was her nickname Molly, like me? Was her nickname Polly? So database search with this best fit search format can sort of give you a little bit more flexibility. So if your ancestor is Mary, but she actually went by Polly, and all the other bits of your search query fit, you're going to find that Polly answer. We'll talk a little bit more about must fit searching, which is advanced search, later. But I just wanted to sort of give you this overview of how the search engine is working and looking at your query. So here we are, we hit search looking for John Palmer in the register, and you can see we have a fair number of results, and here you can see the article title in the events column. And so you can sort of, you've two options. We could just start with this first record and click on it and see what we have to see if it relates to our John. I know this is a kind of ordinary name. It's not the most common, but not the most unusual. You could see maybe our John is not from New Hampshire, so that's probably not him. But I scrolled a little further down this page, and then I clicked on, I forget, we'll have to see. I either clicked on his name or the view image button, and I'll explain to you the difference in a second. So, as I scrolled down the page, I saw this article title, First Settlers of Hingham. And so I actually know that this John Palmer lived in Hingham, so that sort of stopped me, and I was like, wait, I bet that is the person that I'm looking for. But so to sort of create this example for you, perhaps we'd looked at another source that said that there was information about John Palmer of Hingham in this article of the register. So here we're using the keywords field to try and find exactly him in this article. So we'll hit search. And so here you can see that we've really narrowed this down a lot. So we're only looking at the article that we know will be the person in whom we're interested. And you can see that these other Johns, they're all from that same article, but they're not exactly the person that we're looking for. So here you can see I clicked on John Palmer's name, and this will lead you to the record display page. And this is sort of like an aggregate page where you can see a thumbnail of the image, and you're going to have the information that we have transcribed. And so this database is typewritten, so this double view might not be that helpful, but in many of our handwritten databases, you can see how we interpreted the handwriting. And so if it's really messy, our suggestion might give you some ideas. That's how I find the record display page the most helpful. But as I said, we ultimately want to connect you to the image. So you can click view right there. And this will lead you to the actual page. And so I've zoomed in a little bit, but you can see John Palmer's name right here. And it looks like he's mentioned in some sort of land record in this specific article. So we know that he was in Hingham in 1635, and that's about the most helpful information that we got here. So that's sort of how searching within a specific database works. We always recommend looking at the search tips and then filling in the search fields accordingly. We always suggest starting with a really simple search and gradually making it a little bit more complex or changing a few different variables. Now we're going to talk about category search, which is also a best fit like category or database search. So to get to category search, we're again going to start on the search drop-down menu. And here you can click on any of these categories that are in this box right at the top, except advanced search, which we'll talk about after this. So I'm going to click on vital records. And so here we're on the vital records category search page. So this is going to be searching all of our databases that fall into the vital records category. If you're curious about that list, you can always hit this button to see it. And this page is going to look fairly similar to the database-specific search page. So you have search tips that explains common things that you'll find within the category. And you'll notice that there's sort of maybe a smaller number of fields. We're trying to average for the common fields that are available across all databases. So next, I think we'll scroll down the page a little bit just so you can see what you can find below. So again, we have some sample images to give you context and a description of what the category encompasses. And we tried to also point out some notable databases in these different categories. So if you click on one of these images, you can zoom in and see more. Here we have the baptism record of the first Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Boston. So as I said, you're going to get more results because of this best fit nature. So next we're going to search for Joshua Palmer, who's in the same Palmer family from Massachusetts. So it'll look for all Joshuas, all Palmers, and things in Massachusetts. And we'll see how this goes. So I've also refined this search by 1700 to 1710. I think maybe we're looking for either baptism or a marriage, and we're actually looking specifically in Scituate. So let's hit search and see what we find. So here you can see we have a few different Joshua Palmers who lived in Scituate in this time frame. And I know this is a little out of that date range that I put in there, but I think this one right here is the one we want to look at because I actually know from a TypeScript manuscript that was shared with me that his father was Samuel. So we're going to check in on this vital record and see what we find. And so last time we clicked on his name. This time I clicked on view image. And so that will lead me directly to the image page if you want to go from the search results to the image where you might find this person. And here you can see we have the birth as a baptism record, actually, for Joshua, son of Samuel and Anne, in 1716. And since this is sort of alphabetical and by town, if you scan the page, I think there's a few other children of Samuel and Anne too. So this is going to be a really helpful page in our research. So I've been making a fair number of allusions to advanced search. This is what we'll dive into next, and this is my favorite way to search our site. So the difference between a must fit and a best fit search is that advanced search is going to be looking for only your search terms in combination. So that search that we just did for Joshua Palmer in Scituate in the 1700s it's only looking for things that fit in those categories. So if we think about my Molly, Mary, Polly example, if you were looking for a Mary who was born in Scituate in 1700, but we only had a Polly, you wouldn't find her. So it's often good to use these things in conjunction with each other. But to get to advanced search, we'll click on advanced search in that search drop-down menu. So here again, you can see my example is still revolving around Joshua Palmer, and I've made my search a little bit more broad. So we're going to look from 1700 to 1800 in all of Massachusetts and see what we find. I really want to emphasize, did you see how broad my search was? Joshua Palmer, 1700 to 1800 in Massachusetts. And I'm just going to see what comes up. Sometimes people fill out the search form with every piece of information that they know about this person. And, you know, not all of that information is always indexed on a single record in our database. So we have 7 fields that we try to index: first name, last name, parent's name, spouse's name, record type, location, and year. So the thing is that not all of that information is available in every single original source. So say you have a birth record, there's probably not going to be any spouse information associated with that birth record. And, you know, it varies. Some sources are very detailed and will give you everything that you're looking for, whereas other ones don't have as much information. Many of our newer databases are very well indexed, where a few of our older databases are not indexed quite to that high standard. So starting with the broadest search possible will give you the most options to find what you're looking for. So here we searched for Joshua Palmer, and the record that immediately caught my eye was this one from our Mayflower family's 5th generation descendants database, and you can see his father is Samuel Palmer. So that seems similar to what we were looking at before. So again, I'll click on View Image. Oh, just kidding. I'm going to refine my search first. So I thought that you can see here it says Father Samuel Palmer. We're going to make our search a little bit more specific and see if we can narrow this down a little bit. So here you can see in the family member field, I've chosen to input Samuel. And in interest of keeping this broad, I haven't put anything in the last name field. I'm just trying what happens if we change the search around to look for a Samuel in the father field. And now you can see we only have 3 records, and this is probably exactly this family that we're looking for. So sorry, I jumped the gun earlier. We're going to click on View Image now and explore these records. So here you can see the record display page with all of the information. We're looking at a marriage between Joshua and Lydia Waterman right now. And here you can see that Lydia Waterman is actually the one who was a Mayflower descendant. She was descended from Isaac Allerton through her mother. And right here we can find the information about Joshua Palmer. They were married in 1740, and it has information about his baptism and death dates. So the thing that is most interesting to me about this little paragraph are the references. And so remember before when I said, oh, maybe we had a reference to that Settlers of Hingham article, and so then we'd know that that was the article title to type into the keywords field. You can see here that obviously this is not an original source. It is based on the Scituate and Halifax vital records, as well as some records that were recorded in the Mayflower Descendant. And so now you can go from this page, you can go back to our vital records category and maybe try to find these records in the Scituate and Halifax vital records, or you can actually look up these citations in the Mayflower Descendant. We could look up volume 3, page 159, and see what we can find there about this family. So obviously, 3 records are not that much, and as I mentioned, we might be able to find him in, well, we did find him in the vital records before we started, but there's probably more information about Joshua Palmer out there than just these 3 records. And the reason that we only have these 3 is because we're searching for the family member Samuel, and these are the only 3 records that have that family member indexed. So we're going to refine the search again, and get rid of the father's name Samuel and see what else we can find about this person. So here you can see I got rid of Samuel in the family member field, but I added Scituate, Massachusetts, and I narrowed down our time frame a little bit. So I'm just playing with the different categories that we have and seeing what I can find that's a little bit more specific than our first search, but a little bit less specific than our most recent search. And here you can see that, look, this record we just looked at is the top of the page, and then this next record is from the Scituate Vital Records. It looks like it's Joshua and Lydia's marriage. So I found some things that are definitely what I'm looking for. So that's the sort of balancing of sort of a wide to narrow to wide kind of queries that are going to help you find everything that we have on our site. I just wanted to reiterate, as we just saw, searching by relationship can be great to narrow down to exactly what you're looking for, but you will want to keep it more broad because not every record has that relationship information associated with it. So now I just wanted to go over a few of our more advanced techniques that might be helpful to you in your search. So we have an exact search button that can look for exactly the name that you put in, like no more, no less. And so this can be really helpful, but again, I'd recommend using it sort of in an iterative fashion, as we just did with the parents' last names. So my colleague, Don Leclerc, his family is an excellent example of this because Leclerc has been spelled in a huge variety of ways in all of our records. So here you can see he's looking in the 1920 federal census for a Louise Leclerc. And just in the search records, you can see that the top 3 might be the person that he's interested in, and not one of those is spelled the same way. But you can see down here, we have a Louise Ligler, and that record comes up because our database thinks that it's similar enough that maybe it might be interesting, whereas you and I as people can see that Louise Ligler is probably not similar to Louise Leclerc. So that's why exact search can help you weed out like those things like Louise Ligler that are not what we're looking for. So let's go through this example and see what we find. So just to be clear, this is going to apply to the first name and the last name. You can see the exact search button is right up there in the left corner. And now we've only found the Louise that spells it Laclear. But if you wanted to make that search more broad again, you can actually use this slider and slide it back to broad, and then you'd be able to look at those other Louises who were close to the top that were spelled in just a different variation. You can also make your location exact, and so our locations should be entered in town, county, state, country format. So if you're using an exact location, it's best to enter your query that way, separated by a comma. If you're not using the exact location button, we have a little bit more flexibility. Maybe you put in MA instead of mass or something like that. But here in this example, we're going to look for Leclerc's in Monroe County in New York. And so here you can see this first guy, Edmund Leclerc. He lives in Rochester in Monroe County. And so he definitely seems like someone that we might be interested in. And then going down, Arthur Leclerc also lives in Monroe County. So that exact location sort of pinpoints us to this specific place and the families that we might find here. Again, if you would like to make this search more broad, you can use the slider to change your search around. Another interesting field is searching by keyword. And so I would really like to reiterate that only use keyword searching if the search tips of the database suggest that you do so. Sometimes people try to search for things like Revolutionary War or Mayflower or Civil War. We don't have our data tagged with that specific degree of information. So things like the article title search is a valid way to use the keyword field. We're going to go through an example that's in our database, Massachusetts Historical Data Relating to Cities and Towns, and I really like this database, so I'll show you why. So here again, you can see we're obeying the search tips, and to jump back to our Palmer example, I want to learn more about the history of Hingham. So here you can see the text field is going to be sort of like the name of the place that you're looking for. Since this database doesn't have the traditional name, date, location information that most of our databases do, it's a little bit different, but let's click on View Image and see what we can learn. So this database provides basically like a list of dates when boundaries changed between towns as they evolved and grew and got different names. And so if you're searching for the history of your ancestors and they lived in Massachusetts, this can be a really helpful resource. So I had no idea that Hingham was first known as Bear Cove. And if you came across a record that referenced that location and you looked it up, here you can find that that's originally how it was called. And you can see the boundaries changed between a variety of different towns as it grew. And you have a few different names for both archaic names that are probably not what it's called anymore, but also villages or neighborhoods within the town that are places within the town, just maybe not official places. So another way to make your search a little bit more flexible is to use wildcards. And so here that refers to the asterisk symbol. And so in my search, I'm looking for a Davis, and I know that her name begins with M-A-R, but I don't really know, was she Mary? Was she Maria? Maybe Martha. If I'm not really sure what the rest of the name might be or how the rest of the name got recorded, wildcards can be really helpful. So let's see what we find. Here you can see we have a variety of people, Davises that have an M in their first name. We have a few Marys, a Maria, a Marianne. And so this can really help you get the variety of options that you're looking for, particularly for people who maybe have non-English surnames that were being recorded by an an American English speaking record taker, you can maybe put in the first half and have an asterisk, and maybe you can find that name that has been mangled when it was written down. So another wildcard to use is a question mark. And so the asterisk, basically, you're asking for something that begins with something and then can have anything else after it. The question mark is more of a replacement for a single character. So this Leclerc example is really helpful. You can see, what are the vowels in between the L and the R? Is it an E and an A? Is it a I and an A? It could be almost anything. So here we're looking for something that begins with L, ends with R, but could have, a variety of vowels for those places in the word that are substituted with question marks. So here we have a big variety, which could be really helpful. So I really want to review and explain to you the difference between database search, category search, and advanced search, so you have the most information possible to do the best search on our site while looking for your ancestors. And to do this review, I started with another screenshot of our homepage where you can see the various places of how to access. So advanced search is my favorite. That's what we just talked about. It's going to be looking for all of the elements of your query as a singular package. Database search is a great way to find out if we have a database that matches with your research interests. I really recommend browsing that list and seeing, maybe this town's vital records from Vermont is exactly what I'm looking for, or maybe I'm going to look at the California Death Index. So you're going to find that here. And when you click on those database names, that will be a best fit search. Then clicking on any of these categories is going to be a category search, which is also a best fit search that's looking for the elements of your query individually, but that gives it a little bit more flexibility. So I made a little chart also to explain these differences to you. So best fit searches like category search and database search will return many records, but they're going to have that blue line that we saw where, the records that are more relevant to your query will appear first, and the records after that will be less relevant, and you probably don't need to put that much energy into looking at them. The must fit search will definitely return fewer records, and it can be a little bit more narrow. But if you're trying to figure out what records do we have for Joshua Palmer in Scituate, Massachusetts, the list will only bring up that set of records. So I wanted to go through a few different helpful features of our database just to give you the full experience of what searching our databases is like. When you're using our databases, it's very possible that you will have a question or you will find an error in our data. So especially with the handwritten databases, it's very easy for the handwriting to have been misinterpreted. So if you see a name and you think that the N at the end of it should really be a U, hit the report error button and write a little comment that explains exactly what you're reporting. And so then this goes to our email, webmaster@nehgs.org, and I'm actually the primary responder to those emails. So I'll investigate your query, see if it's something that I can easily change. We're always happy to see what we can do about fixing errors and answering questions in our databases. So we also have another location where you can do the same thing, asking comments or questions or reporting errors. So this comment or question box is always located above the help menu, and you should be able to find it on any page associated with search. So here you can see we're on a kind of random search results page, but you can also find it on any of the database search pages, on the advanced search page, and on the record display and image display pages themselves. So sometimes the error that you report is literally there's something written on the page and we have interpreted that thing incorrectly. But other times, the thing that is written on the page itself is incorrect. And so we have a fairly new thing called our record annotation feature that we can use to make a note in that circumstance. So here we're looking at the record display page, but if we actually zoomed in on the image, you could see that it clearly reads Robertson as his last name. However, a user reported to me that actually his last name was Robinson, and this is not true. And so they were able to direct me to these same Massachusetts vital records, and you can see his last name was written correctly in his birth record, and it had all the same information of parents' names. You know, I think they probably lived in the same town. It was very clear that it was indeed the same person who had died. And so I felt very comfortable directing other researchers to that resource. I try to be a real stickler for this. I want to, only offer an annotation when it's very clear that these are the same things. So sometimes people send me information and they're like, oh, this is my ancestor and I know that this is wrong, but they don't have that really clear source that shows me. And so, we're trying to do our best to eliminate errors. So I might be a little bit strict with what counts as evidence for an annotation, but we're really happy to have this flexibility because we are trying to offer both an accurate representation of what's written on the page, but also the truth of who these people were. Print page range is also a very helpful tool. So you can see that we have two print buttons. If you just click print, you will be printing the page that you're on. But print range allows you to print the page that you're on and a number of pages after it. So this is going to be really helpful in journal databases if you want to imprint an entire article. It's going to be really helpful in the probate file papers where maybe we want to print this entire case that pertains to John Alden. And so the record display page is a great place to start because you can see that there are 3 pages in this case. So then from the print page range, you're going to have the opportunity to type in how many pages would you like to print. So you're going to have to know that ahead of time, and we'll put in 3, and then you'll be able to get that full case as one thing for John Alden. And so this can be helpful not only for printing, but many browsers have the print to PDF option. So you can actually download a PDF of those 3 files to your computer. And so basically what will happen is you press the print button, a pop-up window will pop up, and then there's usually something like a destination. And so if you have multiple printers, you can pick which one, but often print to PDF is one of those options. And just you may want to enable pop-ups for AmericanAncestors.org to be able to print smoothly from our site. So I've gone over a lot about how to search our site, how to find what you're looking for, but what happens if your specific area of research is not in our databases? I wanted to give you a few ideas for where to look next. So my top tip is to try our new online chat with a genealogist. So this happens on Tuesdays to Saturdays from 3 to 4 p.m. on Eastern Time. And you can type a question into the chat window and they'll give you an idea of where you should look next. So I came up with an example out of my own family. So many of my ancestors lived in Baltimore in the 1800s, and that's not a real strong suit of AmericanAncestors.org. So here you can see I've typed in my question, and they've suggested that I look at the Maryland State Archives or FamilySearch.org and provided me with a link for how to get started on Family Search. So this can be a great way. Maybe you're starting a new research topic and just want a direction of where you should go, or maybe you've been looking for something for a while and you just want like, what haven't I thought of that might be helpful in my research? You can see here that if your question is a little bit more in-depth, we have a few other options that could be better for answering in-depth questions. And in terms of other places to learn and other ways to learn online on our website, I may be preaching to the choir here, but the webinar section of our website has a lot of great information of how to use our website, how to do this type of genealogy, or just a wide variety of topics that might help you with where to go next with your genealogy. So you have to be logged in to see this page, but you can search using the sort of Control F feature of your browser a bunch of different keywords and see if we have anything that suits your research interests. And then finally, we've talked the most about this upper portion of the search menu, but we also have these external databases. These are not databases built and maintained by NHGS, but they are offered through our library. So things like the 19th century newspaper database, the Oxford Dictionary of Family Names in Britain and Ireland. These are resources offered by our library that are available to you to search online. So they're definitely worth taking a look depending on your research topic. And here at the bottom, you can see the digital book and manuscript collections. So we've spent most of our time today talking about things that are maintained by the database team. So these are usually records that they have a name, they have a date, they have a location. Our library and the Jewish Heritage Center at NEHGS also digitize some materials. And often these are maybe, historic journals, local histories. It's really a variety of materials that are not quite as suited to the strict database format. So I highly recommend browsing both the collections of the JHC and the collections digitized by our library. You can often look by topics such as Revolutionary War, Civil War, vital records, those different topics, and you can find what we might have that might be helpful in your research. So I know we've gone over a lot today and that there is not a handout for this presentation, but we have a subject guide on our website where you can review a lot of the things that we've talked about today. And we're always adding new things to our site. So check out our blog, Database News, dbnews.americanancestors.org. And every time we have something new added to our databases, we'll have a post. So you can always be up to date on what we have. And you can always use the Search This Site button to see if you've missed an announcement about something that is interesting to you that might have happened lately. So we have over 1.4 billion searchable names in our databases. Our biggest suggestion is to start broad and incrementally refine the various parts of your search query. And always make sure you're checking in with the search tips or the database that you're using, so you're not doing too narrow a search to find all of the information that we might have. We always encourage you to email webmaster@nehgs.org with any questions that you might have about using our site or reporting an error. We're happy to be in conversation with you as you conduct your research. So I'm excited to answer some of your questions. I hope this has been helpful.
All right, well, thank you, Molly. So before we get to your questions, I do want to invite you to participate in another free program that's actually happening later this evening with author Stephen Puleo on his newest book, Voyage of Mercy, which tells the remarkable true story of America's first ever humanitarian mission to Ireland during the potato famine in 1847. You can register for that program and other online events at americanancestors.org/education/online-classes. All right, so let's get to your questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can in the time provided. As Molly just mentioned, if we don't get to your question, you can always contact webmaster@nehgs.org. So Molly, we have a question from Linda who asks about my favorite databases that you mentioned and that you can star while looking through kind of the list of databases. Does that list of favorites, does that save after you log out? Is that kind of connected to your account?
Yes, that list is saved, so that's something you can come back to.
And we've also had a few questions about abbreviations. I think in one example, it was John Palmer's baptism, it had C period, R period. There are always going to be abbreviations in published genealogies and other resources. What's the best way to learn what those abbreviations stand for? Where would you find that information?
The first place I'd look would be the database description. For that Mayflower example that we were looking at, we might actually have a PDF that's like the introduction to the volume that gives you a key to all those different abbreviations. I know the Great Migration has a really helpful key, as well as Tory's New England Marriages, where you can sort of decipher what is that arcane abbreviation. In the example that you were mentioning with the CR2 in the vital records, we often have the front matter of the book digitized, and it's at the beginning of the database. So you can always type in the page number 1 into the page number field and hit enter. And so that'll bring you to the first page of the database. And often that's the title page, and you can page forward a couple pages, and there's often like a abbreviations page that tells you that that's from the first volume of church records from the town or something. So either looking in the database description or in the very first pages of that volume are the two places I would look.
All right, and I see a number of people are asking again about the chat service, and I can answer that. So once again, the chat service with a genealogist, it's free. You actually don't even have to be a member to do that. You can find that link on our homepage. It's kind of at the top. It says chat. You can click on that, and the chat service is available Tuesday through Saturday, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock Eastern Time. So be certain to take advantage of that in the future. AJ asks, so when using exact location in the advanced search, do you need to type in the word county or do you leave that word out? Does it matter?
No, I would leave that word out. I'd say, Boston, Suffolk, Massachusetts, United States.
All right. And
so that's a great question.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And Teresa asks, are there kind of additional rules to using wildcards? In your example, you had MAR asterisks. Do you need to have 3 letters before using an asterisk? Can you use an asterisk or a wildcard for the first for the first letter in a name? And can you also use wildcards in multiple fields in a single search? So a lot of questions about wildcards, but what do you say?
I think that gets a little tricky. I would probably have a first letter in there and then use it after that. I'm not 100% sure, but I think if you use an asterisk to start, it'll just see that asterisk and be looking for everything. So I think that in one of our help documents in the help menu, we may have some documentation that describes that more specifically.
All right, and a few questions about annotations. Catherine asks, where do you see those annotations? So if you could answer that first.
Yeah, so the record display page is where that will pop up. And so if you're looking at the search results list, if you click on the person's name, that takes you to the record display page. If you click on view image, that'll take you directly to the image. So we're talking about that record display page if you click on the person's name.
And also, so with the annotations in your example, you showed, I believe it was listed as Robertson, but evidence was provided that should actually be Robinson. So then when you do a search for either Robertson or Robinson, will that record still appear in the results?
I think in that example, his last name is listed as Robertson. And so if you're looking for a Robinson, it may not be at the top of your search. So that is a great example of maybe you'd want to use a wildcard, and maybe ROB with the asterisks will help get you that result a little higher on the screen.
All right. Well, I know we didn't get to every question today, but of course, again, you can reach out to Molly at webmaster@nehgs.org if you'd like more hands-on help with your research. You can also schedule a consultation with one of our genealogists, or you can hire our research services team to do research on your behalf. If you'd like to learn more about those services, you can write to the 2 email addresses that you see on your screen. I'll also be providing this information, a link to that subject guide on usingamericanancestors.org, as well as a link to the recording of this presentation in my follow-up email, and you should get that later this evening. So I want to thank you again for joining us today. As you leave the event, you'll have the opportunity to fill out a survey and give us your feedback. As we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any and all feedback is extremely helpful and appreciated. This free webinar was made possible by the generous support of members and friends around the world. Please consider making a gift to American Ancestors to keep these programs free and also to create more free programs for you and audiences around the world. If you'd like to access more how-to resources or learn about upcoming online educational programs, please visit our online learning center at americanancestors.org/education. I hope to see you at our online programs in the future. Stay safe, stay healthy, and goodbye for now.